Okay. So, one of the incredible things about the story of the Mabul is that you really do feel, it's not just that, like, simply stated, the world is recreated, right? It's destroyed and recreated. But the Torah goes out of its way to emphasize the fact that Noach is, in a certain sense, reliving the experience of Adam, which draws attention to the cases in which you change it. Right? So, just to take a few examples to prove this point. What is the first thing in Pshat in the Pasuk? I know this is going to go against what you think theologically, and I don't understand what the beginning bracious means, but what is the first thing that exists in the world before there is anything? Mayim. Right? Mayim. Right? Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. V'haaretz hayta tohu v'vahu v'choshech al pnei tehom v'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. Right? Meaning, there's nothing, but there is some sort of primordial water. Right? I don't know what that means. I don't know what bracious means. To quote Rav Amital. Right? Big bang, small bang. Ani lo mevin klum ad lech lecha. Right? That was his old thing. Right? I don't know what's going on. Right? I don't know. But Pshuto shel mikra, the first thing that exists is this primordial water, and God's Spirit is mirachefet al pnei hamayim.
Never talks about creating this water.
What?
No, never speaks about.
And never talks about creating the water. Again, I don't know what this means.
Doesn't know what's about balance and creation of Shemon Paris is what's about
Ex nihilo.
No, it's like Hillik matter.
No, so that's the Greeks into this. Hillik matter. Again, I don't know what this means. But again, in Pshat, without getting into what it means,
He created Rakia before he created Mayim either.
correct. Which is Mavdil bin Mayim l'Mayim. Okay. Now, but the beginning image of the world is nothingness except water. Now, what is the beginning of World 2 look like? Or if we call it World 2, what does it look like? Yeah, World 2.0. What does it look like?
Very water.
It's literally, right? It's not like it's water on the entire world, right? On the entire world, and the creation happens with this thing that floats above the water, right? This teva floating, right? That's what it is.
Doesn't wood float anyway?
Yes, but I'm saying the imagery of it. Now it's not right. It's not just this, right? I mean that's like a small point, but right. I mean we can go through many of them, but the most striking one, so I want to focus on, right, is actually not the Mabul, right? We can go through all the parallels in the Mabul, and Chazal do, right? Chazal note, before creation, but in the first creation, God tells Noah, tells Adam purvu. Afterwards, he gives them a bracha purvu. Before he says that you will be redu, right? You will rule over the animals. And afterwards, he says, moratchem v'chitchem, right? Your fear will be on the animals. And Chazal ask, okay, it seems almost the same, but it's not quite. In Breshit 1, you're talking about Adam ruling over the animals. In the Noach story, it's fear, so it's not really ruling, right? In the beginning, right? And it draws attention to the parallels and the contrast, right? In both of them, there's a bracha, but what?
You know what Kamara's is around?
When Rashi quotes these, right? The Midrash notes these. But the story that always bothered me the most in this parsha is the story right after the Mabul, right? Where Noach gets drunk, right? He plants a vineyard, and he gets drunk, and he's unclothed, and then Cham does something. He looks at him, which Chazal, right, in Sanhedrin and in the Midrash, they argue doesn't mean he castrated him, doesn't mean he just looked at him, doesn't mean he sodomized him, right? What exactly is going on? Or whatever exactly. Right? Pshat is he just looked at him. Chazal say maybe he castrated him, maybe he sodomized him. Right? There are certain, the Hoel Moshe is a Talmud of Shadal, and a few modern commentaries say he slept with his wife, right? Because they're trying to explain why is it that Canaan is cursed, right? Why not Cham? So the Hoel Moshe's clever suggestion is that, in general, what does it mean to be Megale Erva in Tanakh?
Megaleh.
Right, erva doesn't mean to sleep with someone, it means to sleep with their erva. Right, megaleh knaf aviv means you sleep with your mother, right, your father's wife. Right, the whole Moshe says, when it says that he revealed the nakedness of his father, it means he slept with his mother, and then had a mamzer who was Canaan, right? So Noach curses Canaan because he's the mamzer son of this act of incest, right? That's the whole Moshe's. Fine. It's a very twist. Anyways, but what is this drunk story, right? And Chazal go to town on this, right? Here he used to be Ish Tzadik, Tamim haya b'darotav, and now, the way Chazal understand, the first thing he does is he plants, and not just plants, but he plants a vineyard, because they take this negatively, even though in Pshat and Torah, Kerem is not necessarily negative, and he gets drunk, and now he's Ish Adama, which they read negatively, right? He used to be this Tzadik, and now he's just a man of the earth, right? But however negative you want to take it, right, it's clear that something is very weird. Right? Something of this whole story is extremely, extremely strange. So, let me note a few parallels, and then a radical suggestion from one of my teachers that I've always found pretty compelling, only because radical suggestions speak to me when I don't know what to do with the story. So several people have noted, Yoni Grossman developed this in the book I was just glancing at from Ray Ginsburg, that many of those parallels, right, this notion that Noach is creation too, appear heavily in this story. Because if you think about it, in Breshit 1, it starts off also with Vayita Gan, right? God plants a garden, whatever that means. And the focus of the story is the notion of nakedness and whether you perceive nakedness or not. Right? Man and wife were eromim, v'lo yitboshashu, and then eventually they do recognize their nakedness. Right? There's this notion of seeing it, of perceiving suddenly what happened, right? Of a sin having happened. There's this centrality of yidiyah, where in Breshit 1. It's the snake saying you'll eat from the Eitz Hadat Tov V'Ra, and you'll understand, right? And you realize that has to do with sexuality, right? Because suddenly they perceive the implications of nakedness, right? And the pasuk says, and Noach wakes up, and he knows Vayeda what his son did to him, and there's these connotations of sexuality, right? Mixed with Yidiyah, mixed with Aram, in a gan, right? You can't miss, right, the association of images that are throwing you back to Breshit Aleph. Yoni Grossman takes this primarily in the positive direction, which is to say that, again, whenever you see these parallels, if you look at the contrast, they'll teach you something new. So he says, well, here you learn something new. You learn that in Breshit 1, who is the main player in the world? Hashem. In Breshit 2, once God says, look, you don't get to live in my heavenly garden, who has to be the main player? Man. So in Breshit 1, who planted the garden? Hashem. In Breshit 2, who plants the garden? Noach. Right? Noach plants the garden. In Breshit 1, after a sin, who curses the sinner? Hashem. In Breshit 2, who curses and blesses? Right? Noach. In Breshit 1, he curses Cain, he curses Adam, he curses Chava, he curses the Nachash, and he blesses Adam and Chava in Purvu. Right? And here it's Noach curses Canaan, and he blesses Shem. Right? So in Breshit 2, with all its complexities and with all its failings, part of what Hashem has done is said, look, I may be pulling back, you get to live in less of a divine world, but the trade-off is that you have to fill my place, right? Man has a higher responsibility to fix the imperfections of the world. You have to deal with the sin. You have to deal with blessing. You have to deal with planting the garden. I'm not going to do it anymore for you, which is, it's sad. You don't live in the idyllic world, but pachot yoter, it's a positive way of reading the story. All right, Clapper has a radical suggestion, and take it or leave it, but I think it's fascinating. He notes these parallels, and he says, maybe Noach wasn't just living through creation 2, but Noach wanted to reverse to creation 1. Because if you think about it, sure, the world was recreated, but there's one thing that fundamentally distinguishes world 1 from world 2. And what is that?
The sin.
Which caused what? The sin, which caused what?
Death and toil.
Da tovara. What's the only way to erase da tovara? To be drunk. Right? And Ray Clapper said, you know what Noach was doing? He was trying to reverse back to creation 1. What did he do? He gets off, he plants a garden. Right? We're back in Gan Eden. But it's not enough to be in Gan Eden. You need to be naked and not care. Because you don't know tovara. So what does he do? Vaidgal b'tocho alo. He becomes naked. Right? And he gets drunk, erasing Yediat tovara in a futile attempt to say, okay, you've recreated the world. But if you recreate the world, can you let us mamish go back to the beginning? Can we go back to the pre-sin world? Can I erase Yediat tovara where Erom means nothing? And what's the message then of the story? You can't do it. Right? Once it's done, it's done. There's no turning back. Why? Because he wakes up, and his sons weren't drunk. His sons understood the busha of being arum, because the change is now innate. Humanity can't go back. There is embarrassment. There is humiliation that is tied up with sexuality. You can't go back. You might want to, but humanity has changed. And he wakes up, vayeda, and he knows. Right? That's the key word. He tried not to know, but he wakes up and he knows. Vayeda et asher asalo b'no hakatan. He knows that sexuality isn't gone. He knows that you can't reverse. What can you do? Right? If you can't reverse, so what's your only choice? And now back to Yoni Grossman. Once you recognize you can't go back, your only choice is to say, fine, I don't live in world 1.0 and I can't turn back the clock. I can live in world 2.0 and make the best of it. So then what does Noach do? He curses the ones who represent the basis of humanity post-sin, and he blesses shame. Right? And Yefet, who said, look, we may live in a world where sexuality is meaningful, where arum is something to be humiliated about, but instead of taking advantage of the base nature of mankind, they cover him up. They recognize that, okay, now it's something to be embarrassed about, but that doesn't mean we just have to sin. We can respond to in a proper way. We can take sensitivities. We can learn how to deal in world 2. And Noach says, okay, I've learned my lesson. I can't turn back the clock. But those who are going to play on the basis natures of mankind, arur. And the people who know how to live in world 2 and improve on it and be good people even in the imperfect world that we live in, Yaftelohim Yefet, Vishkon Ba'alei Shem. Those are the people who deserve to build the second world. And therefore this story is the story of a failed attempt at mamish reversing and a learned lesson of saying, look, it may be you can't reverse it. That doesn't mean you can't make the best of the world that you're in. Because you can strive for perfection even in world 2.0. So that's, I think, again, you can take it or leave it, but for me, I think that adds a dimension of what is going on in this bizarre story and why Noach would want to be drunk and what exactly is happening, what the story is teaching you post-Mabul. At least it's something to think about. You can tweak on it, but I think it is definitely a fascinating possibility.